Hi, it's me again, and guess what? We're sewing. It has been a really long time since I did a sewing video, but I've got time on my hands, so I figured that we would give this sew tube, cost tube thing another go. So what I have in front of me, this is a dress that I thrifted. Now, if you don't know me, if you've been here for a while, you've probably picked up on this, but I am a huge Lilo and Stitch fan. I absolutely love that movie. It is my favorite comfort movie. And one thing that we have done to help get us through the last few months that have been kind of rough is we have planned a trip to Disneyland. We don't know yet quite when we're going. We just know that it's going to happen probably sometime in like 2024 now. Anyway, I thought that this dress would be perfect for Disneybounding as Lilo. It's a bit longer than her dress. It's like a maxi length, but that's fine. It's also a little bit snug on me. So I can actually cut off some of this hem and use that to build out the bodice, and that'll be fine. However, I noticed something when I was trying it on. This dress, it's handmade. It was some beginner seamstress's project. You can see the unfinished edges on the seams. It also had this weird pleat that ran all the way down the back. And they had added that in because there's actually a hole right here. And their way of fixing it was just like sew over it over and over again. So they made a pleat that ran all the way down, which is so weird. Get those tucked in there. But they've also got like really wide seam allowance. It's all together with safety pins. So what I'm going to do is I'm completely disassemble this. So I'm going to completely disassemble it and iron it out and everything, take out the excess fabric and kind of reallocate it where it needs to be. And then I should have a fairly decent representation of Lilo's dress from the movie. So unfortunately, they sewed over a lot of seams multiple times using a very small stitch length. So my project for today, I want to get at least half of those stitches out. Now this dress has already been washed, but it's probably going to need washed again once I unpick all of those seams. It's going to be a whole lot of not fun. But once I do that, I already undid that weird seam that ran all the way down the back, except for where it had been sewn over so many times. And then I also undid the shoulder straps, because they did not match. Like the front was narrower than the back and they just didn't line up. So I am going to unpick everything, including their hem seams and all of that, and then we can get started with the recreation. Do you see this? They didn't just sew the hem in place, they also ran a line of stitches where it folded. Oh my God. binding into that neckline and then stay stitched it to help keep it stable, which is smart. That is what you're supposed to do. They didn't do a great job of it. I'm actually thinking this is a very high neckline for me, and I also look best in more like a square neckline. So I think what I'm going to do is just change it slightly to cut out that piece of fabric, and we'll get to that in a minute. So I finished picking the dress apart. I left the bodice top attached and the waistline drawstring thing. I did realize I have much larger breasts than the person who made this. So I am going to have to change this neckline. And what I think I'm going to do actually, wonder if that would work, is taking, can I take the back piece and just mimic that? Because there's enough fabric here that I could just mimic that and then cut a lower neckline, because the square neckline is going to be more flattering on me, and I also need to add longer straps to it. So we'll see. I didn't unpick the bottom hem just because I don't know if I'm going to need to use that part of the fabric. Oh, and I forgot this little spot in the middle that they sewed over and over again. I forgot to unpick that, and then we will see how bad this hole is. But every single seam had at least 2 rows of stitching on it. It was so bad. There was one that had been sewed twice by machine and once by hand. It's a lot. So I'm going to finish unpicking this, try and glean out all of the little loose threads, and then we'll get to ironing, and I will try some self-draping and see if I can get that to work. Okay, so the hole is just like a little pinprick right there, which they didn't even cover up all the way with their stitching. So that is not a big deal. I can totally fix that. And now I'm going to go glean and iron this. Okay, so I couldn't film most of that because my camera needed to charge, but I think I've got pretty much all of the pieces done. So this piece on top, that is going to be the back of the dress. And what I did is I actually switched the original front with the original back. So what I realized is that the original bodice was just way too small for me, and I wasn't going to be able to make it work. So I have that set aside down here as scrap fabric, and I'll probably cut the new straps out of that. So here is the back. It's just a very simple like trapezoid shape. And then what we have here is we have the new bodice, the skirt front, which is the original skirt front that is cut out of the top of the original back panel. And then here is the extra fabric that I was able to cut off the hem. And I'm just going to split that in half so I have one on either side. And then I went ahead and I kept the original sash tie. I don't know if I'm going to use it yet or not, but it wasn't terrible. It does tie around my waist, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it for right now. So what I'm going to do now is start basting some of these pieces together, and then I can do a more proper fitting before I do the final seams. everything assembled now for the most part. I still need to add to the straps. I'm waiting to do that last so that I know exactly how long it needs to be. But I now have a little bit of extra room in the back. I'm fine with that. I'm probably going to add a little bit of elastic there just to cinch it up. I left room for a zipper, which it looks like I don't actually need. So I think I can go ahead and trim off some of this excess fabric that I left and go ahead and start French seaming this together. Now, I use French seams for a lot of different reasons. Number one, it makes fitting easier. Number two, I don't like raw edges. And I just think that it looks a lot nicer. So let's go ahead and get that done. And yes, I am hand sewing this whole thing because I want to watch TV while I'm working on it. Couple of days, I finished doing the long seams on the dress, so I'm gonna go ahead and try it on. And I also went to Joann's last night and I got 2 packages of bias tape, which I'm going to use to help me hem and finish the bottom and also the square neckline. So I've got all French seams going on here. So I think I did cut this opening a little bit too big, so I'm probably just going to add a couple little darts like right here, just to take it in a little bit. Or what I could do, since I have to add straps anyway, is just cut this straight across and then add straps out here that then crisscross over the back. I think that might be the better option for me, but I'm going to take a look first. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. I do have elastic that is going to go in the back to kind of hold it snug, and then I think once I change the shape of the straps and put the belt back on, I think it's going to look really good. Ash handed me one little quickie project that needs to get done first, and then I'm going to get back to the dress. closer over here. What I did is just sewed on that bias binding, so that when I flip it in, you're not gonna see it. And then I add a little bit of stay stitching to that curve that goes on the underarm. Normally I wouldn't bother, but this fabric's kind of been through the ringer, so I want to make sure it doesn't stretch out. And it's still hard in the background. I don't know why I get so hot when I'm sewing, but I do. I especially just did steam ironing, so that made it worse. But what I've done is just sewn the bias binding onto the hem, ironed it so it's folded over, and then I can just do an invisible stitch on there, and that way I don't need to use as much fabric for the hem because I don't want to lose a lot of length. And that's the same way that I did the casing for the elastic. I am going to go ahead and sew the elastic in place and then fold that over it. And what I did is, instead of stitching in the ditch in that fold right there like you normally would, I actually sewed halfway between, so that way there is room to accommodate the thickness of the elastic, because it's actually a little bit wide for this, but it's the only white elastic that I have right now. And if I had been smart, I would have sewed the backs of these straps on first instead of the fronts, but we're gonna make it work. I still need to figure out some kind of like undergarment situation for this, but we're not going to Disney for a while, so that can wait. That's what it is in the back. And I will take some full shots once I have someone else who can take them for me, and then post them once they're done and see if I can find something else other than this to wear under it. But that's it. That has been my adventure in Disneybounding. I can't wait until I'm actually able to wear this at Disney. The only drawback is that I forgot to add pockets. I was thinking about it, but I was so hesitant about the fit and if I was even going to have enough fabric that I totally forgot. So I've got a little bit of fabric left over, just like this little tiny bit from the bodice originally, and I'm wondering if there is something that I can do with it, because I don't think it's really big enough for a bag, but I might be able to do like a belt pouch that's like just big enough for a cell phone or something that I can wear with this. So that's it. Thank you for joining me on this episode of All Dressed Up and Nowhere to Go, and come back soon because I have some more craft projects planned.